My parents scoffed. You can't even pay your own bills, let alone eat here. The waiter came over and asked, should we charge it to the restaurant account owner? My sister gasped, and my parents nearly choked. I shouldn't have agreed to dinner with them. I knew exactly how it would go. The same way every dinner, every phone call, and every holiday gathering had gone for the past 10 years. An interrogation, followed by judgment, followed by a reminder that I was a failure compared to my younger sister, Amber. And yet, like an idiot, I still went. Maybe some part of me still wanted their approval. Maybe I thought just this once, things would be different. I was wrong. The moment I stepped into La Fontaine, I spotted them immediately. My mother, Sylvia, was sitting stiffly, her perfectly manicured hands folded on the table. My father, Howard, was scrolling through his phone, likely reading stock reports or something else more important than acknowledging my existence. And Amber, well, she looked nervous. She always did at these things. I took a deep breath and walked over. Mom's eyes flicked over my outfit, a simple button-down and jeans. Not exactly a tuxedo, but not rags either. You're late, she said, barely looking up. Good to see you too, Mom, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. You actually came dressed like that? My father finally looked up, giving me that familiar look of disappointment. This is La Fontaine, not some cheap diner. Amber winced. Come on, Dad. It's fine, I cut in, trying to keep my voice steady. Let's just order. The menu was full of overpriced dishes, things like truffle-infused steak and imported seafood. 10 years ago, I would have stressed over the prices, trying to calculate how much I could afford without embarrassing myself. But not tonight. Order whatever you want, I said, casually, setting my menu down. Mom scoffed. How generous of you. I ignored her and flagged down the waiter. He gave me a polite smile. Good evening, Mr. Calloway. The usual? I nodded. Yes, please. And whatever my family wants. Amber gave me a weird look. You come here often? I smirked. Something like that. Dinner started fine, if you ignored the tension thick enough to cut with a KN Faye. We exchanged some small talk, mostly about Amber's job, her new condo, how well she was doing. And then, like always, the conversation turned to me. So, my mother said, setting her wine glass down, have you finally come to your senses and started looking for a real job? I clenched my jaw. Mom, because this restaurant nonsense isn't sustainable, she continued. It's been, what, 3 years? 4? 5, I corrected, gripping my fork tightly. 5 years, she repeated, as if that was the most absurd thing she had ever heard. And you're still struggling to pay rent. Amber looked at me with sympathy. Are things really that bad? I exhaled slowly. Things are fine, Amber. That's not what your landlord said. Mom chimed in, reaching for a breadstick. She called us last week. Said you were behind on rent. Again, my father shook his head in disappointment. You're a grown man, and you still need us to bail you out. I never asked you to bail me out. My voice was tight. No, but you expect us to, my mother said. Because you can't take care of yourself. You couldn't even pay for this meal if you tried. I should have let it go. I should have just sat there and taken it like I always did. But this time I didn't. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, the waiter returned with the check. He placed it in front of me, then smiled. Should we charge this to the restaurant account? Mr. Calloway? Silence. My mother froze, her hand still hovering over her wine glass. My father stiffened. Amber's eyes widened. I leaned back in my chair, watching the gears turn in their heads. Yes, I said, taking my time. Charge it to the restaurant account. The waiter nodded and walked away, leaving my family in stunned silence. Amber was the first to speak. Wait, your restaurant? You own this place? I smiled. Yeah, La Fontaine. It's mine. My mother blinked, struggling to process. But you were behind on rent. For my old location, I corrected. I moved 6 months ago. I own this building now. My father cleared his throat. You're the owner? I shrugged. Yeah, Dad. I am. For the first time in my life, my parents were speechless. And it felt damn good. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. My mother's mouth opened, then shut, as if she couldn't quite decide which reaction would best convey her shock. My father, always the one to recover first, leaned back in his chair, his expression carefully neutral. Amber, on the other hand, just stared at me, her fork still hovering over her plate. You own La Fontaine? She asked, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. I took a slow sip of my wine before answering. Yeah, Amber, I do. Mom let out a small, disbelieving laugh. You mean you manage the restaurant, right? Not own it. I tilted my head. No, Mom, I own it. I bought last year. Her eyes darted toward my father, silently searching for confirmation that this was some elaborate joke. But he didn't say anything. He was too busy studying me, probably trying to figure out how his failure of son had suddenly become someone worth taking seriously. That's impossible, she scoffed, shaking her head. You were struggling just a few months ago. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Yeah, and then I made smart investments, partnered with the right people, turned things around. Amber finally set her fork down. But why didn't you say anything? I raised an eyebrow. Why would I? Every time we talk, all you and Mom do is remind me of how much I've failed. You never ask how I'm actually doing. You just assume. That shut her up. Mom was still in denial, though. You expect us to believe you suddenly came into enough money to buy La Fontaine? You couldn't even afford rent last year. I exhaled through my nose, keeping my temper in check. Yeah, I was struggling, but I figured it out. Turns out, when people stop telling you you're a disappointment and actually let you work, you get things done. My father finally spoke, his voice low and measured. Who gave you the money? I let out a humorless laugh. Of course. Of course. He couldn't believe that I had done this on my own. I earned it, I said simply. I worked my off, expanded my catering business, invested my profits, and when the opportunity came, I bought this place. Dad frowned slightly, as if my answer didn't satisfy him. Mom, however, just scoffed again. This doesn't make sense. Restaurants don't just become successful overnight. You must have had help. I shook my head. Nope, just me. And before you ask, no, I didn't ask Amber for money, and no, I didn't go crawling to some loan shark. Amber shifted uncomfortably. I wouldn't have minded if you asked. I know, I said, giving her a small, genuine smile. Amber was the only one in the family who had ever shown me any real kindness. But I didn't need to. Mom pursed her lips. And yet, for years, you let us believe you were failing. I raised an eyebrow. Let you believe? No, Mom, you chose to believe that. You never asked for the truth. You just assumed I was a failure because it was easier than considering the possibility that you were wrong about me. She opened her mouth to argue, but for once, she had nothing to say. Dad cleared his throat, his fingers drumming against the table. So, how profitable is this restaurant? I almost laughed. There it is. The moment they realized that maybe, just maybe, I was worth paying attention to. It's doing well, I said vaguely, watching as he fought the urge to press for details. Mom crossed her arms. You should have told us. I leaned back. Would you have believed me? Silence. Amber swallowed. So what now? I looked around the restaurant. The dim lighting, the soft hum of conversation, the waitstaff moving seamlessly between tables. My restaurant. Now, they would finally see me for who I was. But I wasn't sure if I even cared anymore. The silence at the table was suffocating. My father was still processing. My mother looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. And Amber, well, Amber just seemed confused, caught somewhere between shock and guilt. I let them sit with it for a moment, savoring their disbelief. For years, they had dismissed me, belittled me, acted as though I were a burden, a failure. And now they were in my restaurant, eating my food, served by my employees, on my dime. I could have left it at that. I could have let the moment linger, enjoyed their stunned expressions, and called a night. But that wasn't enough. Not yet. I leaned forward, steepling my fingers together. So, Mom, Dad, tell me again how I've been such a failure. My mother straightened, finding her voice again. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. We were just worried about you. Worried? I repeated, tilting my head. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounded a lot like ridicule. Like you enjoyed reminding me how much better Amber was doing. How embarrassing I was to the family. Amber squirmed uncomfortably, but she didn't argue. She knew it was true. My father cleared his throat. We didn't mean anything by it. We just wanted what was best for you. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, you wanted what you thought was best. You never actually cared what I wanted. Mom scoffed, reaching for her wine glass. Oh, please. We always try to support you. You just made it very difficult. I let out a short laugh. Support? Support? Mom, do you remember when I told you I wanted to open my first restaurant? She waved a dismissive hand. Of course. And we told you it was a terrible idea, because it was. I nodded, tapping a finger against the table. Right? And do you remember what you said when I asked if you'd loan me some money to get started? She paused, eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to remember. But I remembered. Oh, I remembered perfectly. You said, and I quote, you can't even pay your own bills, let alone run a business. No bank in their right mind would give you a loan, and neither will we. Just get a real job and stop embarrassing yourself. Amber sucked in a breath. Mom, you said that? Mom had the audacity to look offended. It wasn't that harsh. I smiled, shaking my head. Oh, but it was. And you know what? It stuck with me. Every time I struggled, every time I questioned whether I could do this, I remembered those words. I took a slow sip of my drink. So, thank you for that motivation. Mom rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. No, I said coolly. I'm being honest, which is something this family isn't very good at. Dad exhaled through his nose. Look, what do you want us to say? That we were wrong? Fine. We were wrong. I tilted my head, studying him. The words were stiff, forced. He didn't actually believe it. He was just saying it to end the conversation. And that's when I realized something. They weren't actually proud of me. They weren't happy that I'd succeeded. They were just pissed they hadn't been right. That should have hurt. But it didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't need their approval. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. You know what? It doesn't even matter anymore. Mom frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I gave her an easy smile. It means I don't need your validation. I don't need your support. Not that I ever had it. I did this without you. And I'll keep succeeding without you. Amber looked at me sadly. But you're still family. I sighed. Amber, you've always been the only one who actually treated me like family. And I appreciate that. But Mom and Dad, I turned my gaze back to them. They only care now because they realize I'm worth something. Not because they actually care about me. Dad's expression darkened. That's not true. I just chuckled. Isn't it? Because 5 minutes ago, you were convinced I was some struggling failure. And now that you know I own one of the top restaurants in the city, suddenly you want to talk? I shook my head. Sorry, but I'm not interested. Mom scoffed. So what? You're just going to cut us out of your life? I shrugged. I don't know. You seem perfectly fine treating me like I didn't exist before. I turned to Amber. I'm not cutting you out. But them? I gestured to our parents. They made their choice a long time ago. Amber swallowed hard, looking torn. That's fair. I pushed back my chair and stood, adjusting my sleeves. Dinner's on the house. But I have work to do. Mom looked absolutely idealized. You're leaving? I smirked. Yeah, some of us have real jobs, you know. Dad's jaw tightened. You think you're better than us now? I chuckled. No, I think I'm better without you. And with that, I walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. That was it. That was the moment I realized I was truly free. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their validation. I had built something incredible despite them, not because of them. And that was the best revenge of all.